I've been wanting to give myself an excuse to talk about Star Wars for a while now on this channel. The franchise was no stranger to great games like Battlefront, Battlegrounds, Empire at War, Shadows of the Empire, Rogue Squadron, Episode 1 Racer. It's crazy not only how good Star Wars games were at the time, but just how many of them I had played, which makes today's topic a bit weird for me because it's based on not only one of my favorite Star Wars movies, but it's a game I've never played. Oh yeah, we're talking about Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about this game, how it ties into the film, and briefly touch on the mobile version. So join me today as we take a short trip down memory lane. Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith released on May 4th, 2005 for Xbox, PS2, DS, and Game Boy Advance. The film released into theaters nationwide on May 19th, 2005, just 2 weeks after the game's release. Now, I'm a big fan of the film, and I know that's getting to be a more accepted opinion online. Not that I care about any of that, but people do seem to be warming up to the prequels in general. For me, Episode 3 was always the best of the bunch and rivaled even the original trilogy of films. Seeing Anakin's fall from a Jedi Knight to a Sith Lord, even with Obi-Wan's guidance, was distressing and disturbing. I certainly think prequels are hard to pull off in general, seeing as we already know the end result, but Episode 3 did just that. With all of that said, I'm happy to say the game's story primarily follows the film, with some deviations here and there. Think of the game as sort of a compilation of the best action scenes from the film, with additional footage thrown in there to extend combat sequences. It certainly isn't the best representation of the film's story, and it isn't trying to be. It's more of a companion piece in my opinion. For example, the game features 0 scenes of Padme, even though she plays a vital role in the third film. If you're not familiar, Anakin keeps having dreams where he sees Padme, the mother of his children, die in childbirth. So Palpatine, being the Sith Lord he is, and knowing that Anakin is vulnerable, takes advantage of his weakness and claims that he can save Padme's life with the powers of the dark side. That's the biggest motivation Anakin has for doing what he does in the later stages of the film. This is completely absent in the game, and you'd have very little context as to what's going on if you didn't see the film. There's another sequence from the film and game that I wanted to talk briefly about. So after Anakin joins the dark side and wipes out the Jedi Temple, Yoda and Obi-Wan return from their missions abroad and realize the massacre that occurred following Order 66. As Obi-Wan is watching the security footage of Anakin cutting down the Jedi, you see a glimpse of this man right here. Now, if you don't know any better, you'd assume this is just some random extra they pulled off the street. But no, it's actually a short appearance by the character Sin Dralig. His character has made appearances in other Star Wars media in a more prominent role, but in my eyes, none are bigger than this game's. He's one of the bosses in the game and essentially the final boss of the temple itself, which makes sense too, seeing as he's a Jedi Master and probably Anakin's toughest opponent that day. We don't get to see this fight play out in the film really at all. It's played through the hologram, but still, I thought it was a neat addition to the game that wasn't really in the film at all. I liked seeing the what-if scenarios that occurred throughout. For example, in the film, when Mace Windu comes to arrest Palpatine, they get into a lightsaber duel with each other and Anakin is on screen for all of 2 minutes during the scene. Whereas in the game, Anakin and Mace Windu fight across multiple arenas before Palpatine finally finishes him off. I loved seeing these tweaked scenes from the film translated into an Xbox game, and they mostly succeed. Revenge of the Sith is primarily a hack and slash game. If you're familiar with the older God of War titles, you'll be very familiar with this game. You're able to swing your lightsaber, use force powers like push, pull, heal, etc. If you're familiar with Star Wars, you'll know exactly what you're getting into here. You're able to counterattack with a well-timed block, as well as grapple an opponent to break their block. Pressing B lets you stab forward at an opponent, which regularly would result in an insta-kill on the weaker enemies. I enjoyed the combat. It was serviceable, at least early on, and I do want to explain that. So, early on, you're primarily killing droids with blasters. These droids don't have much in the way of defending themselves against a lightsaber, so you'll cut through hordes of them with ease. Now, once we start getting to the human and humanoid enemies later on in the game, they begin to wield weapons that counter your lightsaber, maybe even having one themselves. So, the lightsaber battles are some of the most iconic scenes in the films, but this game didn't do them justice in my eyes. It's not that the mechanics are bad per se, but it's a combination of issues. First off, the AI is very unpredictable in this game. Sometimes they'll be relentless with their pursuit of you, and they'll really punish you if you don't know how to counter them. Other times they'll just run away from you endlessly until you approach them. I used these moments to heal my character, which was very much appreciated. However, that's not what the developer intended, obviously. On top of this, I experienced some other weird glitches, typically related to hitboxes and iframes. Many of the larger enemies or bosses have animations that have to play out once they activate them, so you can stand there and swing all you want, but you won't hit them, stun them, or stop their animation. On top of this, I noticed during the final fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin that my opponent would regularly clip inside of me and we were unable to hit each other. This made for a really clumsy fight and ruined what otherwise was a very climactic scene. Later on in the game, enemies just start taking more hits, and I feel like they take one or two too many. Thankfully, Episode 3 features sort of an RPG-style upgrade system. You won't be upgrading your damage output, at least not directly, but you'll be able to unlock different combos and abilities that'll make combat a bit more tolerable and varied. Hitting your opponent with a few light attacks just to switch it up mid-combo and end with a stab was very satisfying. In addition to those combo unlocks, you can also directly upgrade the output of your force powers. This typically will allow you to do more damage with Force Lightning or regenerate health more efficiently with Force Heal. I found that Force Heal was a necessary upgrade, definitely later on in the game, as your opponents will also have that fast Force Heal ability and they'll use it quite a bit on you, and obviously you want to be able to keep up with them. If I could do it over again, I probably wouldn't invest as much in Force Lightning or Saber Throw, as they had a low damage output overall. To upgrade your health and Force Bar, you'll have to rely on secrets that are hidden throughout the level. These typically involve blowing up a certain barrel in the background or just backtracking to an earlier part of the level once you've progressed. I didn't find all of them, but I did find a good chunk, and the game wasn't too difficult for me for the most part. In addition to those upgrades, you can also pick up a Saber Crystal, which fills your combo meter down here to its fullest. Every single kill from this point on is masterful until it runs out. The game gives out ratings based on how quickly you're able to fill the bar, but also will decrease as you take damage or just wait too long in between kills. The ratings start at fair and continue up through good, impressive, and masterful. The higher the rating and the more kills you have at these ratings, the more experience you'll be able to spend in between missions. In between combat, you'll sometimes be tasked with small puzzles to complete. These usually involve you stabbing a lightsaber into a door and then tracing the outline of the door with the left stick to cut it open. It was fun the first few times I did it, but there was no variation to this and it got old pretty quickly. There are also occasional turret sequences where you're shooting down ships or whatever else stands in your way. Again, I felt they were pretty repetitive, but I thought I should mention them anyways. Revenge of the Sith features 17 different levels in its campaign, each one ranging from 15 to 20 minutes long. Now you're probably wondering why I'm even talking about this game in 2022. I don't love it, and this is a channel that primarily focuses on recommendations, so what gives? Well, the PS2 and Xbox versions feature what I believe to be the best selling point of this game. The 16th level is the canonical ending of the story, where you take control of Obi-Wan and duke it out with Anakin on Mustafar. Obi-Wan takes the high ground in their fight, Anakin gets cocky and tries to strike Obi-Wan but loses his legs and left arm in the process. Once you've completed the story, a mysterious 17th mission appears. This mission replays the duel from the 16th, but now you assume the role of Anakin. And boy, let me tell you, this alternate ending is amazing. It's not very long or anything, but seeing Anakin stab Obi-Wan in the back had me in shock. I won't spoil the entire ending, there's a little bit after this, but damn, is it badass, and I'm very comfortable in saying that this is the game's biggest draw. After you've beaten the campaign and seen both of the endings, you're able to take part in bonus missions. Bonus missions allow you to play as other characters from the Star Wars universe, including Yoda, General Grievous, Count Dooku, and others. These are just glorified horde modes though, there's no specific story missions or new dialogue or anything like that. There's also a co-op mode which lets you and a friend tag team levels together. Lastly, there's a 1v1 dueling mode where you and a friend can fight to the death in lightsaber battles. I found them to be pretty bland, though I did like the inclusion of the Darth Vader and Ben Kenobi fight from episode 4, that was a nice touch. I also like how all of these characters are included in this mode with their own movesets and abilities, even though some of them weren't even in the campaign. All in all, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith isn't a phenomenal game. It's not a great game. I'd argue it might not even be a good game, but I found it to be an enjoyable experience nonetheless. I found my copy at a used game store for about $12, but you can also buy it on the Xbox store for $10, and it is backwards compatible with all of the newest Xbox consoles. Now I wanted to briefly mention the handheld versions of Revenge of the Sith. I got my copy on DS that year for Christmas, and as far as I can tell, the DS and Game Boy Advance versions are identical. The game is a side-scrolling beat-em-up where, again, you play as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. Now, in this one, however, you choose which character you'd like to play as, and that's who you are throughout the entire game. On the level select screen, you can actually see where their stories split and where they reconnect again. It's a nice visualization that I wish the console versions had. The scoring system from the previous game is replaced released with these green orbs that you find throughout the level. After each level, you're able to spend these green orbs on upgrades. Just like the home console releases, you're able to block, counterattack, etc., but I think I like this game's system more. It just seemed to work better, maybe because it's more simple. I don't know, I'm not sure why, but seeing the Count Dooku fight stripped down to a GBA title really put a smile on my face, and actually seeing any of these very recognizable and now classic scenes put a smile on my face. There's no real dialogue or cutscenes beyond text over pictures, which is cool, it's fine, it gets the point across. This game did seem a bit more geared towards kids, which is fine, but any of the more violent scenes are replaced with a quick flash where you cannot see the blade cutting through someone. I liked the cartoon look of the recognizable characters and the overall aesthetic. In addition, it was nice hearing that recognizable John Williams soundtrack covered and remixed for the Game Boy. Unlike the home console versions, I didn't finish this game for the video. And you're probably asking, why is that? Well, I just didn't find it all that enjoyable, and it's not that the combat is poor or it's buggy or anything like that. No. It's just very mediocre, it's very middling, and I never quite found it to grab me like the home console version did. The GBA just doesn't have the horsepower to produce a compelling cinematic experience, and that's sort of why I like the Xbox version more. It's a companion piece to the film, whereas the mobile game feels more like a promotional item. It follows the story to a T, so no alternate ending, and its only replayability is going through the campaign again as the other Jedi. I think if you're really fixing to play a 2D beat 'em up, you can do much worse, but if you're not really the biggest fan of these types of games, you can certainly do better. All in all, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith is a really cool entry in the Star Wars saga of video games. It's not the best, but it's certainly not the worst, even if we are just talking about this specific generation of consoles. If you're a Star Wars fan like me, you might want to check this out. And with that said, I turn it over to you. What's your favorite Star Wars game? It can be anything for any reason whatsoever. I'd love to read your comments. I try to read and reply to every YouTube comment posted. Alright, let's roll the outro. Thank you guys so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. This week I'm going to be recommending my previous video, Die Hard Trilogy. It's a set of 3 individual games sold in one package. It's great and I think it's worth a watch. I'm also going to recommend my Pariah video, just because it's another science fiction type game. It's not great, but it is what it is. As always, have a good one.